Right, now we've got a former Division 1 star, I believe, is that right?
Absolute champion of the game and a great character of the game.
And the great Luke Hosey is going to take the next 12-13 minutes to put the man under the pump and find out where he is now, apart from Swan Terrace at WOW FM. Enjoy.
First of all, I'd like to introduce Jeffrey Strawbs Emmel to the show, and anyone from anyone in amateur league circles would know Jeff. Jeff was a great player for the Adelaide Teachers College and also the Riverside Football Club, and many state games. Jeff, tell us a little bit about your history, mate.
Well, thanks for having me on the show, Luke. I really appreciate it. It's a great show you put on, you fellas. Well, look, I didn't start footy until I was 19. I actually played hockey. I was playing for Adelaide Uni, and stooping over that stick just didn't do my back any good as a growing young bloke. And there was a fellow at Adelaide Teachers College, he coached there, called Howard Mutton, Chops Mutton. And he said, well, if you can't see over the stick, you used to be a high jumper, you better come and play footy. And that's how I got into footy. And the remarkable thing about that year was that I was just a novice. But because I could jump a little bit, I was able to get up and get my hand on the ball. And I learnt the game the hard way. I took a few knocks, but it was an interesting year, that one, because somehow the very young side we had knocked off the mighty University in the grand final in 1963, and they were on the roll of going for an amateur league record at the time, and I think we stood in the way of it. But that's how I started footy, just from moving from hockey into the game.
And that's unbelievable, because you are still playing today in the AFL Masters, and I believe the oldest player in the game.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't sort of keep tabs on the ages of the blokes who play. If you worry about your age too much, then I think you might as well give it away. But look, I love playing in the Super rules, the Masters rules. It's over 35, so we play every fortnight, and I think you had Louis Carlotta on the show, who's the president of the Masters Australian. But I've kept playing that, and I don't play all the games during the year, just play a handful. Played a couple of weeks ago and enjoyed it. But I know that the fellas out there aren't going to poleaxe me. There is a rule that you're supposed to, if you want to, you can wear purple shorts, and then you get a free kick and a free handball. But well, who wants to be the first to wear the bloody purple shorts?
You would have, Jeff, I'm quite sure.
No, I've never worn them.
Jeff,
No, I've never
I do remember as a young lad playing with you at 15, and you used to turn up to training in the pre-season and used to pick your bag up from the year before in Wilkie Calder's change rooms in the thing, and the bag had been there all the way through the summer, and you just picked it up and used to train in it first up next year. True?
Well, I was a little bit casual about that sort of thing, but I've been known to turn up when we had white shorts instead of the black, and
had tickets in the socks?
Well, no, I ended up having a white pillow slip. I thought it was a white shorts I grabbed out of the linen press, but boys used to get into me about that. But I was probably a little bit casual in the early days of footy.
Had tickets in the socks though?
Yeah, well. The socks were sometimes uneven and different colours, but we got over that as the years went by.
Greatest players you ever played with in amateur league footy? Because I'll just tell the listeners out there, you've also been a state selector for many years, a state player. You've seen A1 football since the 60s all the way through now. Who's some of the great players?
There were some terrific players, blokes who never ever went on to play SAAFL or further. But look, probably the best player I ever saw in the amateur league, and I was a state selector at that time, was Andrew Obst.
Okay.
Now, Andrew played for West Croydon as a kid. He ended up going to the Magpies, Port Magpies for a while, and then he was quickly picked up by Melbourne and became, well, quite a star player at Melbourne. Now, Andy was in our state sides that went over in the 80s to play against WA and Victoria. He was the best player I saw in the amateur. His reflexes, his ability to spring above a pack, got under everyone's guard. And it was no surprise to me when he ended up at Melbourne. But players who I played with or against, some of the best players were guys like Terry Tierney.
The great Terry Tierney, yes.
Terry Tierney, he was
used to play in a sun hat on.
He did when it was in the trial games, yeah. When he went forward a little bit early, my old mate Terry. But he was a wonderful player, All-Australian many times. There's a bloke at Adelaide Uni called Paul Rofe.
Yep.
Rofe, many people would know, is the Crown prosecutor for some years. But Rofe was a wonderful player too. There was a little fellow who was a terrific rover called Jimmy Katsaris. He used to run around like an unregistered dog and always get the ball. Very, very skillful.
Great university player.
Yeah, they were. I thought Sleepy Anir was a terrific player too. And there was a ruckman who played with me in the first state game I ever played in '69 called Ian Hockridge. I thought was a damn good player as well. But look, there were many of them. And they, you could go through the list and, you'd be saying, oh yeah, look, I should have included him in the list. But they're just a few of the names of the guys I played with I thought were fantastic footballers.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to play in the '79 grand final with you in the A1 reserves, and we're beaten by Teachers College fairly convincingly. In fact, I got knocked out 5 minutes into the first quarter, so I remember that well, my first one. But the second one that you might want to talk about 1981 against Kilburn.
Yeah,
we had a lot of messages about that one.
Well, that was an interesting one because I'd done my time in the A's, and I was still probably about 38 or 9 or something. And Sleepy said, "Well, you can look after the reserves." And yes, we had been pummeled badly by Adelaide Teachers College the year before, but this game against Kilburn, anyone on the field will never forget it because with about 30 seconds to go, we were 5 points down, I think, and the ball was in our forward lines, and of course Kilburn were doing what you would normally do, trying to choke it up, but there was a guy there in the back pocket really wasting time, and he was not going to kick the ball. And Barry Lewis was the umpire, and I remember standing next to him and saying, "Barry, this guy's wasting a bit of time." And the bloke did up his shoelaces, and then he turned around and pulled one sock up, then went back and did another shoelace up. And Barry warned him. I think Barry warned him about 3 times in the end.
Yeah.
He warned him about 3 times. And then bang, pinged him. Our bloke, who was the full forward, Alan Lewis had run down from the other end of the ground to follow this guy down. And he'd actually picked up the ball, and from that impossible angle, absolutely impossible angle, the Adelaide Oval in the members' corner just slotted it through, and that was the ball game.
Alan Lewis wouldn't kick that again in 100 more attempts.
No, it was an impossible kick, and I actually felt for the Kilburn boys after that because...
Riverside won by a point.
Yes, Kilburn have been the best side during the year though.
Yeah, I just want to say that for Ricky Fox and all the boys who did mention Kieran Martin especially because he was the coach that day, and I've had great joy in telling that to Kieran over the years.
Cheerio to the Kilburn boys.
Yeah, bit of fun and
a good mob.
How about state trips?
Well, state footy was always something that you aspired to play back in those days, and I was very fortunate because I don't think I played in a losing side against Victoria. Started in '69, finished in '73 at a carnival in Melbourne, but took no real part in the carnival in Melbourne because in the swimming pool at the hotel we were staying before the game, I put Cole Delaney up on my shoulders, a mate of mine from Exeter back in those days, and Cole did one of those smart-ass dives into the pool, and of course I did my back in. So I ended up, lucky I had my guitar with me, I became All-Australian guitar player supporting the side as they won the carnival in the 100th year of Victorian amateur football. Played that at the MCG, by the way.
At the MCG?
Yeah, that was at the MCG. That was a cold room. So that was great in '73, but yeah, I played games against the West and against Victoria. And we had a terrific side, coached by Howard Mutton, Chops Mutton.
He was one of the great state coaches of all time.
Well, he just continued to preach the philosophy of play on football, play on and handball, and give the ball to someone else in a better position, and to run.
The university style still of today.
Well, that's right, and he just had that knack of getting on well with his players. So when you went out there to play a game with, and I of course had him as my Teachers College coach back in the early '60s, But he just had that knack of getting to know you. You trusted and respected him. And I mean, I can remember in a trip when Chrissy Hunter and I,
The great Chris Hunter,
Seton Ramblers boy, we were rooming in Perth, and Chops got up the night before we were to play WA and said, "Now fellas, I don't want you to change any of your habits before the game.
It's a worry.
Don't change any of your habits." And I looked around at some of the boys, like, this is a worry. And he said, "Now, Rofi, Tierney, you play cards on a Friday night, I want you to play cards." And he said, "Chrissy Hunter, Red, you go out and have a few beers and, go somewhere. That's fine, you do that." So we all did that. We all did exactly what Chop said. And I remember when the bus was taking us to one of the Subiaco Ovals, 1972 it might have been, and we the bus stopped about half a k from the Oval, and Chop said, "Okay, Cole Delaney, Red Emmel, out you get," because he knew that we had to have just one schooner on the way to the state game. So, just to calm the nerves and just to calm the nerves and have a little bit of a chat. And I did that all my career actually, just had one, only one. But
I did have a couple every now and then before a game.
Only one.
Can't do it now though.
I know, no, not these days. You'd be put out to rest.
Just the last question. I actually played in this game with you. I was playing on a half forward flank, and you're at centre half forward. And we're at the old Adelaide Teachers ground there, and next to the old line. And you did get reported. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen or heard of.
It was the most unfortunate incident. I was sort of free of any of that. I always saw the fun in the game, and even though I played against some very hard opponents back in those days, we used to get into each other on the field, but we'd always, after the game was over, be in there looking for each other to have a beer. That was the spirit of the game, and I hope we can still maintain that. But this particular day against my old club, Riverside versus Teachers College, and I think I was just being a little bit too smart. I had the ball, I was dodging and weaving a bit, and there was a great big strong fella called Melvin Chesser, lovely bloke. And as I was dodging and weaving, I'm sure Melvin really just tried to hit the ball out of my hands. I don't think he was trying to hit me, but unfortunately I got into position and he hit me right on the end of the old fella, which crushed into my pelvis. And my instinct was just to throw my fist, and unfortunately I collected Big Melvin, nearly broke my hand. But umpire, I think it was Don McKay, was just standing right next to me. He said, "Look, I'm sorry, Strawbs, I have to report you." I said, "Oh, it's okay." Went to the tribunal. I thought I'd get off this, I'll be able to perfect record and all of that sort of stuff. It wasn't looking too good. They provided all the evidence, and then I said, "Well, look, gentlemen, I need to show you the injury." So I went to show them the injury, and
went for the zipper.
I remember Alan Statton saying, "Mr. Emmel, that won't be necessary."
So you
gave me a game. I had a game.
You were about to take out the old fella at the tribunal. I'd love to see that.
Only to show the injury, but I got a game. Yeah. And that was the medalist.
We would love to go on, and I'd love to have you back again at some stage, please, because there's a whole myriad of stories. But it's 12 o'clock, and thank you very much for your time.
It's my pleasure.
Legend of the game, and everyone at Adelaide football.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It's sensational to hear all those old stories, and like I said, we'll probably need 2 hours to get through them all. But you've been listening to 100.5 Saturday Game Day with TJ Greeny, Luke Hosey, the Chicken Man, and we had an assortment of guests today. Another very interesting show, but now it's